My number one rule when it comes to talking to someone who wants to release stored energy on their body is to not go on a diet. What does that mean, Carrie? Well, let me tell you. Hi, here I am with your weekly Brain Management 101 thought. With brain management, I'm all about learning about the basic things about our brains, watching our thought patterns, getting in front of them and managing it so that they aren't managing us, right? So that we are in control of our lives, not at the effect of it. And when we understand how our brain works, we can better do that. When it comes to wanting to release stored energy on our body, fat, let's talk all about fat, right? The number one thing you do not want to do is you do not want to put yourself into a mode of restriction, which is what majority of diets out there tell us to do. And so when you go into a mode of restriction, you flip the switch in your lower brain, right? Here's this cross section of our brain. Up here is our neocortex. Up here is the prefrontal cortex. That's where our conscious thinking, that's where our highest self, divine self lives. But down here in the lower parts of our brain, and this is conceptual, the brainstem, the limbic system, the cerebellum, it fell off, it's supposed to go right there. These parts of our brains are completely focused through evolution of time to keep us alive. And the most basic thing for survival is food, water, and air, right? And sleep, right? But if we're restricting a most basic need of getting food, then that's going to activate the survival response in our brain. So if we're in restriction mode, right, and then that activated part of our lower part of our brain is activated, then all of a sudden we are in this inward battle between our higher selves and this lower brain part. And there are skills and things that we can learn through brain management to get in front of and manage that. But ultimately, I recommend just don't restricting. Have everything come from a place of abundance, have everything come from a place of peace. And ultimately, the way we do that is by making peace and partnership with our body, right? Because when we're in restriction mode and that survival mechanism or switch, so to speak, is flipped in our brain, our brain's like, oh no, our survival is being threatened because we are restricting calories, right? So then what happens is then you have things like obsessive thoughts around food. I've experienced that. I was miserable about 6 years ago because here I was after having my 5th child and I was at a healthy weight, but it didn't feel sustainable because my mind was constantly thinking about food and I just wanted my brain power to go somewhere else, right? I wanted to build something else in my life besides thinking about food, right? The whole kitchen was full of food, yet I'm constantly thinking about food. So when that survival mechanism is switched in your brain, we have to quiet it. We have to support it, right? Because if you're obsessive thoughts around food, if you're having bingy behavior, all of these things are things to signal towards you that your brain has gone into survival mode, right? If you find yourself restricting and losing weight and then going and gaining it again, right? Back and forth, it's because you're bouncing from restriction, right? And then the evolution of your body takes over, of your mind takes over, right? The survival response is taken over, and back and forth you go. And women especially make this mean that there's something wrong with them when really it's just the way your brain is wired to help you survive. That's it. It doesn't mean anything about you personally. It just means you have a brain that wants you to survive. So once you understand how that works, and once you get curious and watch how that works, and then ultimately, the number one step in my FBF program, Freedom with Body and Food, is to then create, number one, partnership with your body. No one exists in this world today, right, here among the living, who does not have a body, right? Our body is our house for ourselves as we sojourn throughout this life. Yet, so often, we find ourselves in opposition with it. So the number one thing in my FBF program is to restore that homeostasis, partnership, link arms with, in forming this strong relationship with our bodies. Okay, so that's my number one. So don't go into restriction. There are ways to release fat or stored energy on your body that do not include this idea of restrict. And I'll talk about that moving forward.